Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Evan Coleman, and today I'm going to be discussing Epic Systems Corporation, and I'm going to be applying this to our economic frameworks of market structure, technology diffusion, and asymmetric information in the U.S. EHR landscape. So I'd just like to start with a introduction of EHRs as a whole. An EHR can be broken down as a singular electronic health record. It also is the makeup of the entire digital health system within a given organization. So the electronic health record composes of the demographics, clinical notes, medications, vitals, medical history, labs, imaging. Anything related to the healthcare organization is going to be stored within the electronic health record. This has provided major strides over time for hospitals, private practices, all healthcare facilities in the United States that have adopted this practice in regards to access, workflow, decision supports, quality of care. It's really streamlined the transmission of information from one site to another, the review of documents from one department to another, and been very smooth in regards to the prior method of paper clinical notes. Why this topic is so important to healthcare economics in the United States. EHRs are now central to the US healthcare delivery. You can see the statistic here that 96% of non-federal acute care hospitals have adopted a certified EHR system. Now, within this industry, there's been a rapid consolidation of EHR vendors. There's only a few organizations that provide such a service. Epic Systems Corporation is one of them, and there's been allegations that they control up to 94% of health information of Americans. Now, this dominance does raise concerns of monopolistic or oligopolistic behavior, and we'll discuss that today. So a quick rundown on Epic Systems Corporation. Again, they are the leading US EHR vendor. There's been broad adoption of this vendor throughout hospitals and other healthcare facilities throughout the United States. Their market power is tied to their technological advances, the switching costs, and vendor lock-in. We'll discuss all of those in detail today as well. And again, there has been allegations of anti-competitive and behavior harming providers and patients. Just some fast facts to show the significance of Epic in the United States. More than 305 million patients have an electronic record in Epic. They possess 39.1% of the acute care hospital market as of 2023. Over a 6-year period from 2017 to 2023, they acquired 633 hospitals in the US. And the US News and World Report's best hospitals of 2024 and 2025, they now have all 18 health systems within that list as well. So clearly, Epic is the dominant force in the United States EHR system. I do want to say it is a good system. It's not like it's a poorly ran system that has established the market and put everyone in a stronghold, but there are implications with the market structure and the way they have taken on competition that raises concerns. So the three health economic frameworks that we're going to apply to this topic is market structure, diffusion of health technologies, and asymmetric information. I want to start off by talking about market structure. Essentially, this is the number of firms within an industry and the market power that they possess. The familiar firms or familiar forms that we know versus a monopoly. This is when there's a single seller in an industry. So naturally, they possess complete pricing decisions because they're the only seller of a given service or product. Next is monopolistic competition. This is rather than a single seller, it's a singular product that's differentiated from the rest of the market without a close substitute. A good example from the course text was physicians themselves and say a private practice, because one doctor is not a carbon copy of the next. So they essentially are a different product, and that creates a monopolistic structure in the industry of private practices. So the third is a oligopoly, and this is when there's one of few sellers. Now, they're not the singular seller, but they still possess great market power. So applying this to Epic, it does meet the criteria of an oligopoly firm. I created a criteria assessment below. Epic is not the sole EHR vendor, but they're one of few major firms, and naturally this creates the oligopolistic market. They have significant market power. I've covered before that they control a vast amount of medical records for the entire US population. They have high switching costs, and the impact of this is that they have a great influence over the pricing decisions. Secondly, we have the diffusion of health technologies. This framework explains how Epic is able to grow at the level that they did. Now, there's two major adoption influences that we touch upon in the course text, and that is profit principle and information channels. Profit principle is simply, is this technology going to make me money? An example that I recall from the text is surgeons identifying a new surgical technique in an academic paper that shows a higher level of profitability than what they were using before. Epic has a similar structure to this, in which early adopters recognize the efficiency of adopting this electronic health record. And this ties right into another factor of the star physician concept. This is when leaders in the industry adopt a health technology and the rest of the industry follows suit. So if you take a look at this graph on the right, I found this from Health Affairs, and it's just a trend of a natural diffusion of health technology. So this would be for a given technology, and you can see you have the innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggards. The star physicians would be within that section of the opinion leaders, as they're building steam for a product, building popularity. And there is a real sociological aspect to this where popularity can naturally grow over time based on word of mouth, your network that you're in, various factors like that. So applying this specifically to Epic, the major drivers here, care everywhere, going back to the sociological factors, care everywhere was a huge factor, as this allowed different healthcare facilities with Epic to share their medical records between one another. What this caused was a natural barrier for organizations that don't have Epic, is now you have to manually send medical records from your site to the next or vice versa. And going back to the profit principle, there was perceived reliability and revenue cycle management benefits. So again, if it's going to make you more money, it's going to build popularity. And then we saw large hospital systems influence smaller ones in the industry. Now, again, I want to bring up that fast fact as it applies to this framework. From 2017 to 2023, Epic acquired 633 hospitals. And surely these factors contributed to how that happened. The third framework is asymmetric information. Now, this occurs when one party has more information than the other. Typically, this is going to be a seller and a buyer, whichever way that might be. Now, the drawback of asymmetric information is that it's going to increase the risk of suboptimal decisions, and it'll cause a market inefficiency. The textbook talks about the Lemons principle, and they use used cars as the example. And this is when the seller is fully aware of the quality of a product and the buyer is left to infer on the distribution of the respective good. Now, what I mean by distribution is truly the thought process that on average, the quality of a product is going to be normal or simply average. The interesting effect of this is that a buyer might go in being willing to pay a higher price for an average good than what the seller actually intended to. And it actually draws back quality in the market because the seller realizes for an easy sell, they can lower the price of a lower quality product. And then the higher quality products leave the market as they're not getting purchased by the buyer. Tying this directly to Epic itself, Epic has a great amount of informational advantage when it comes to their product capabilities. So there's that quality point that we touched upon on the slide before. Buyers of this EHR do not have the full picture on long-term total costs, implementation costs, customization expenses, and maintenance fees. Now, this leads to lender lock-in, which I'll touch upon in the next slide. But if you can see in this picture on the right, we have complexity of the software, size of the solution, and custom features. Those are the three frameworks that Epic uses when they're building a price quote for a respective organization that wants to purchase their EHR. This is not enough criteria to determine what the true cost is going to be over a long span of time. So I acquired this from one of my sources, John Russo, VP of Healthcare Solutions at OSP. This is Epic's base pricing model. Now, it shows in full transparency that self-hosted, $1,200, large hospitals and clinics, $500,000, so on. But there is a great amount of additional costs that come with Epic. Coming back to the used car comparison, you might have your flat fee, but then initially, when you're signing the dotted line, now there's all the bells and whistles that come with it. There's mandatory updates, or it's not going to run properly. There's long-term costs that you might not anticipate. This really can put healthcare facilities in a tough spot financially. So how does Epic's market power affect providers? This is tying right into what we've discussed about. High switching costs means limited alternatives. And what I mean by switching costs is if a healthcare facility or organization realizes that Epic is not in their best interest financially, the cost that it would require to switch to a lower cost system might require so much capital and resources that it's not worth that organization to switch. Specifically, the migration of data. You've got to remember that with a healthcare facility, downtime is absolutely crucial. If you have to close your entire EHR, which essentially is the heartbeat of most health systems today, now you're losing a drastic amount of operating revenue, and there's a lot of implications that come with switching from one to another. Epic is well aware of this, and it ties right into that vendor lock-in that we have spoke about. You're locked in with a certain vendor because you don't have the capital or the resources to seamlessly switch to the next that might be better in the long run. Now, this also can restrict interoperability with competing systems, as not having the same EHR can negatively affect facility. So how does this impact the patients? A lot of this is going to come down to innovation and the finances of a health organization. Market concentration, such as this, where there's a single, or not single, but a few amount of EHR vendors can reduce innovation. The limited competition means that the vendors have more control of the costs, and naturally they're going to make those costs higher. Access and quality can be harmed. If we are running this singular EHR that might not be optimal for the fit of a health system, we're going to see some drawbacks. And again, I've touched on the antitrust lawsuits that have been present with Epic. A specific example is the payer platform Particle Health. A payer platform is essentially an online database where insurance companies can pull medical records for claims analysis. And Particle Health's claim was that when they had established with Epic, and Epic found out the profitability of such platform, they then cut off customer data access, made discredited complaints, flooded support with baseless security concerns, and Particle, in their lawsuit, claim that this can be repeated without consequences to other competition. So to wrap this up and connect the theories, the oligopoly explains why Epic has the market dominance that they do. The technology diffusion explains how they were able to grow so rapidly from a nationwide standpoint, and asymmetric information explains how they've sustained that power and their pricing strategy over time. And all three of these things are going to shape outcomes in the US healthcare economy. So, final conclusion, Epic's role represents a transformative trend in healthcare administration. This is now a major cost for health organizations that they strongly have to consider in an industry where the operating margins are so thin. The economic theory reveals how Epic has built the market power that they possess, and the harms include reduced competition, higher costs, and provider lock-in. Understanding all of these dynamics is going to be essential for navigating the future US healthcare system. Here's my sources, and that's all. Thank you very much. Bye.